This is Outnumbered, and I'm Melissa Francis. Here today is Harris Faulkner, Town Hall editor and Fox News contributor Katie Pavlich, Fox News analyst and co-host of Benson and Harf on Fox News Radio, Marie Harf. And joining us on the couch today, Tom Dupree, former Deputy Assistant Attorney General under President George W. Bush. And boy, we have a lot of legal issues to get to today. We need your expert opinion and your smile and laugh.
Absolutely. I'm ready to get to
it. Michael Cohen, to learn his fate today, reports from inside the courtroom are that Cohen says he takes, quote, full responsibility for crimes, including campaign finance violations and lying to Congress. Federal prosecutors reportedly claim that the president directed Cohen to pay off two women who alleged that they had affairs with the president. Earlier, President Trump distancing himself from any alleged involvement in the campaign finance violations, telling Reuters, quote, Michael Cohen is a lawyer. I assume he would know what he's doing. Number one, it wasn't a campaign contribution. If it were, it's only civil. And even if it's only civil, there was no violation based on what we did. But Democrats like Congressman Eric Swalwell blasting the president's defense.
Let's go back to April 5 when the president was aboard Air Force One and said he had no knowledge of any of these payments. And so now here we are. He's acknowledging the payments. Look, he is a lying president, and a lying president is a weak president. And I don't think we should hang our hats on these payoffs to Stormy Daniels and others. But I think they show that he is a shadowy operator, and it's probably more important to look at how he has conducted himself as it relates to Russia.
Laura Ingalls live at the U.S. District Court in New York City with more. Laura.
Well, good afternoon. It has certainly been a very busy morning, and a lot of people have spoken in front of the judge. We understand that the sentencing is happening in just mere moments. Both defense attorneys, prosecutors, and now Michael Cohen have all spoken in front of Judge William Pauley III to express their view of who Michael Cohen really is. Michael Cohen's kind of the lead right here because he just got up and was able to speak directly, and this is really the most that we have heard from him in regards to all of the charges against him. He started by addressing the court saying that today is the day I am getting my freedom back. I have been living in a personal and mental incarceration ever since the day I accepted the offer to work for a real estate mogul whose business is that I deeply admired. He said he stands before your honor humbly and painfully aware that we're here for one reason. He said he takes full responsibility for each act that he pleaded guilty to, including those implicating the president of the United States. There was one moment, our producers tell us, that he did tear up in court, apologizing to the public, saying you deserve to know the truth and lying to you was unjust. He said he had a blind loyalty to the president. He mentioned the president's tweet on calling him weak. Cohen agreed with the president and added that his weakness was a blind loyalty to Donald Trump, saying he felt it was his duty to cover up his dirty deeds. Now, as we heard from the others who spoke in front of the judge, and remember, everybody is trying to get in front of the judge to give them their side. The prosecutors, of course, with the Southern District of New York want a harsh sentence for Michael Cohen. Robert Mueller's team, a prosecutor, was here today who talked to the judge about the cooperation that Michael Cohen has given their office in terms of the Russia probe. No cameras or cell phones allowed, so we're waiting literally for somebody to come running out to tell us what the sentence will be. We understand that it's, there is the federal sentencing guidelines that could go between 42 and 63 months. We hear it might be somewhere in between, but really nobody knows until the moment the judge gives his sentence, which we are expecting any moment. Melissa?
Laura Ingle, thank you so much for that. Tom, I'll bring it out to the couch to start. I think everybody who's watching this is wondering, what is the significance of what happens today for the president?
Right. Well, the first question, of course, is the significance as far as Michael Cohen goes. And we've all been speculating on where the sentence is going to come down in a range. My prediction is that the judge is probably going to go low 40s in terms of the months that Cohen is sentenced to jail. The fact is today is going to be a tough day for Michael Cohen. It is a day of reckoning for him. It's been a day that's a long time in coming. We know that the president doesn't like Michael Cohen. We know that the prosecutors don't like Michael Cohen. And it remains to be seen whether the judge likes Michael Cohen. My guess is the answer is probably not. I think as far as the significance for the president, president.
Yeah.
I don't think today's hearing is going to have any direct impact. Today's hearing is largely about what Michael Cohen is going to be doing for the next several years. I don't think we're going to learn anything new today, factually, that we don't already know or that wasn't already spelled out in Cohen's plea agreement or in the sentencing briefs that have already been filed.
Okay, but what is the implication then, I guess, for what he has pled to for the president? Because that's why people are focused on this, is what does it mean? Is the president implicated in something criminal, as you have Michael Cohen sit down and say that he's pleading guilty to, among other things, tax evasion, campaign finance, and lying to Congress? Certainly of those three, the campaign finance would have to do with the president.
That's right. I think that's the one that probably comes closest to linking the president to allegedly illegal activity. We all know that campaign finance law is one of the grayest areas of law there is. There are very few clear-cut lines. It seems to me that the president has at least a colorable defense that, assuming Cohen made the payments, as he's admitted doing, that it wasn't a violation of campaign finance law. This is the same issue that entrapped Senator John Edwards, you may remember, where similar types of payments were made. Edwards was ultimately acquitted at trial. He was mistried on various counts. So the president at least has a theoretical defense. In the court of public opinion, though, it's not a defense, I think, that is necessarily going to resonate with a lot of people. I think that's the issue that the president is going to have to navigate.
Yeah, I agree. There's the legal piece of this, and then there's the court of public opinion. And going back to something that was in the intro there, we should care about the president lying about this, even if it's not criminal. He has said repeatedly on the record.
We're going to get back to that in 1 second, because we've got to pause right now and let the rest of our stations join us, Fox stations. I'm Melissa Francis in New York. Former attorney to President Trump, Michael Cohen, learning his fate today as a federal judge has announced his sentence, and it is 36 months. 36 months right now for Michael Cohen. That's what we're learning. And at this time, we want to go back to Laura Ingle, who is standing outside the courthouse and has more details on this. Laura.
Yes, and the judge just announcing that sentence moments ago, 36 months for Michael Cohen. Those are the reports coming from the courthouse right now. We are awaiting our producers to come outside to verify that. But by all intents and purposes, we've got that word coming from inside of the courthouse. Of course, this was a timeline that was to be debated in front of the judge today, which it was, with prosecutors from the Southern District of New York arguing that these crimes of tax evasion and corruption were very serious and deserved to have this type of sentence, while Robert Mueller's team argued that he, in fact, Michael Cohen, had cooperated with them, not basically asking for leniency, but letting the court know exactly how much he has helped them in recent months. Michael Cohen first saying in his memo as lawyers, saying that they wanted no prison time at all. But Michael Cohen kind of falling on the sword in front of the judge today, talking about the misdeeds that not only he has done, but that he said that he has helped to cover up for the President of the United States. Those are his words. We will get more as the attorneys come out. And again, this is unfolding behind us right now, and we're waiting to find out if these attorneys are going to come out and speak to us. We understand the Cohen's team may give us a prepared statement any moment. Back to you.
All right, Laura, we will stand by for that. In the meantime, we want to bring in Brett Baer, who is chief political anchor and host of Special Report. Brett, some had speculated it could be as much as 4 years, 48 months. Instead, he got 3 years. What do you think the reaction will be?
Well, listen, this is the lower end of the sentencing guidelines, but it's still significant, 3 years. Just some reporting out of the courtroom that as the judge read the sentence, Judge Pauly, Cohen apparently closed his eyes and shook his head slightly as if in disbelief. In addition to the 36 months, he has 2 months concurrent for lying to Congress, as well as a forfeiture of $500,000 restitution and a fine of $50,000. So this is significant. Now, we can talk about the pressure that's been put on Cohen and the pressure that can continue to be put on Cohen. This actually could be relooked at, this sentencing, for up to a year if he provides additional cooperation to the special counsel. A lot of people are looking at this as more of the effort to put the screws on Cohen because he didn't provide everything that they thought he should provide in his cooperation with the special counsel and the Southern District of New York.
But there are others who take the flip side of that and say that you don't sit down and sentence someone until you are done with the whole procedure, and you wouldn't rely on their testimony after the point that they've sat down and been sentenced. So sure, you could kind of argue the other side of it. He's already given it up.
Definitely. But he's not a great witness to begin with, Melissa. I mean, he obviously doesn't have a great track record with the truth, and he's obviously pleading guilty to lying multiple times. This could be part of, and this is speculation, part of the prosecutor's efforts to increase the pressure on him, perhaps. Maybe not, but in the filings, the U.S. Southern District of New York clearly had a problem with how he acted and really wanted to not give him a break, even though he did cooperate with the special counsel.
And as people look at this sentence and they look at 3 years, you don't want to just look at it through the lens of this is about those campaign finance violations. There were a lot of things that we learned along the way, including tax evasion, which is a really big deal and carries a big punishment with it, right?
Yeah, and we're just here, and the hearing just ended, so we should see the people come out and the lawyers perhaps give a statement. But that's true. There are a number of different elements to this. Many of them deal with Michael Cohen's businesses, we should point out. And the other thing is to take a bigger perspective on this. This was the president's, candidate Trump's, personal lawyer. He was a guy who came to reporters and said he was ready to take a bullet for Donald Trump. In handling everything in his businesses, and at the beginning of the campaign, really interacted with a lot of us. The fall from grace is pretty strong, pretty far, and you wonder exactly what he has told special counsel and the other prosecutors here.
Hey, Brett, it's Harris. I just want to get this in here real quickly because you're talking about that relationship that the president had with his former attorney. Apparently during this, before it wrapped up, Michael Cohen, because we have reporters in the courtroom and they've been coming out and telling us what's going on, Cohen told the judge that he felt that it was his duty to cover up the president's, quote, dirty deeds. And there's some reporting, too, that he also said that he had blind loyalty. So I know you and Melissa were just talking about that relationship to the president prior to being the president, obviously, which led me to take a path of darkness instead of light. Did we learn much about Michael Cohen today?
Well, he's not a good lawyer. We've learned that, I think. I think that's fair to say. His statement that he was referencing the president's tweet, saying that he called him weak, and it was correct, but he said for a different reason than he was implying. It was because time and again I felt it was my duty to cover up his dirty deeds. Doesn't get into specifics there about what we're talking about. I venture a guess that we will hear from the president on Twitter or someplace today in reaction to all of this. And obviously this is a serious thing. 3 years in prison is not anything to joke about.
And you made the point that he's not a terrific lawyer, and this is something that we've heard other people say along the way, especially recently. We know that we're just seeing crossing now that he has a forfeiture of $500,000, restitution of $1.4 million, and a fine of $50,000. A lot of the punishment that has been focused on him and the criticism is the fact that he's an officer of the court. So he's supposed to be upholding the law and he's supposed to be representing the law. Was that a big component of this, do you think?
I think so. I mean, it seemed like the prosecutors, the way they wrote these filings and the recommendations, they were pretty mad. They were pretty angry that Cohen answered the way he did, kind of took them on a ride at the beginning, and clearly they wanted to see some significant sentence is how they wrote it. We're told that the judge will allow Cohen to voluntarily surrender on March 6th. So he is getting some time here. He didn't have to bring his toothbrush to court to go right to a jail cell. So he'll have some time. And again, that could fit into this talking to the prosecutors one more time to see if there's anything else he may want to tell Robert Mueller.
All right, Brett Baer, thank you so much.
We want to go back outside now to the courtroom and that area where you see the brass door spinning. We have our reporters, Laura Engel is going to join us, and Rick Leventhal, Laura, was in the courtroom. So we're going to listen in as you depose our own reporter. I was giving a little bit of color of things that were coming out of the courtroom. Now let's get it closer to first person from Rick.
Rick, I need you to come in. Yeah, we've got Rick Leventhal here who's joining us. He was inside the courtroom today. So we hear the 36 months, 3 years, but now you have the details. You can tell us about the money, too.
Well, 36 months and 3 years supervised release probation on the first group of charges, and then another 2 months on the second, plus $50,000 fines on each, so $100,000 in fines. The sentences would be served concurrently, and he's going to be allowed to voluntarily surrender, and that'll happen on March 6th. So he has almost 3 months of freedom left before he goes into prison. But it's less than the recommended sentence from prosecutors.
Right. And, this is an interesting situation that we have outside the courthouse. We've done this before, Harris, where, the reporters are out here and we have to divide and conquer, and we've got producers inside, and I'm glad that you were able to be in there today.
Well, this was fascinating because I was inside the courtroom and Michael Cohen was obviously there flanked by his attorneys. And at the end, after his attorney spoke and both sets of attorneys from the government spoke, he was allowed to get up and speak. And
which we had rumors this morning that might happen, and he looked very serious when he walked in, and he was prepared.
Well, his demeanor was serious the entire time. He was obviously paying very close attention to what was being said in the courtroom. And then when it's his chance to get up, he said that he stood before Your Honor humbly, painfully aware that we're here for my actions. He said that blind loyalty to Donald Trump led me to choose a path of darkness over light, and that time and again I felt it necessary to cover up for his dirty deeds rather than listen to my own moral compass. This is Michael Cohen telling that to the judge. And at the end, his voice broke when he talked about his family. His entire family was in the courtroom. His father, his mother, his mother-in-law, his father-in-law, his wife, his children, his brother and sister, his cousins. And he talked about how much support he's gotten from his family, and he said, I know I've let them all down, and it will become my life's work to be the best version of myself. That's when his voice broke. He said, I'm truly sorry, and I promise I will do better.
And what was the reaction from the family? Oftentimes we'll hear gasps, we'll see tears.
None of that. I didn't see any of that. I saw just everyone listening intently. I didn't see anyone wiping a tear. Just everyone focused very much on what he was saying and then listening to see what the judge would say.
Stormy Daniels' attorney Michael Avenatti was spotted. Was he in there?
I saw him. He was in the back row of the courtroom, listening, just calm. There was a lot of very, very strict decorum in there.
Right.
So everyone was in their seats paying close attention. And again, I think the headlines were Cohen spoke, apologized to the court, apologized to his family and friends, and he's going to prison.
Laura, if you could ask Rick,
so that's the latest
where is Michael Cohen right now? Because we know that he doesn't have to report until March 6th, that he has some time to organize his things. He was talking about the response
We
in
should
the
have got you
courtroom.
an earpiece.
Yeah.
Where's Michael Cohen right now? We know that he has time before the March 6th turn-in.
Well, he was, when I ran out of the courtroom to come down here, he was flanked by his two attorneys, and we expect that he will, once he has some sort of post-sentencing consultation, will come back out these front doors of the courthouse and get into a vehicle and go home. Because he does have some freedom.
Our legal experts had told us he would have probably about 60 days to get his affairs in order to turn himself in. So it sounds like that's what the judge.
Yeah, the judge asked his attorney Guy Petrillo if he had a date in mind for this voluntary, turning himself in, and the attorney said, but not really. And the judge said, okay, March 6th.
There
Just kind of. That was it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Laura and Rick, thanks
we'll
to
wait
both
to
of
see
you.
who comes out of the courthouse.
Yeah, I know you're going to stay right on top of the story right there. Thank you to both of you. Joining us now is Jonathan Turley, constitutional law professor at George Washington University. He is also a Fox News contributor. Sir, thank you for joining us. What's your reaction to the sentence and the fine?
I think he got a good sentence from his perspective. I wouldn't have been that generous if I were the judge. He had two aggravating conditions or criteria that the prosecutors raised that I thought probably should just negate any cooperation he gave. He also had divided prosecutors. Some said he wasn't very cooperative. Mueller says he is. But the judge gave him as good a sentence as he could possibly have hoped for. For those of us who have been longtime critics of Michael Cohen, and I certainly am among them, this is not a fall from grace, because I can't remember a time when he was in a state of grace. I mean, Cohen had a dreadful reputation as a lawyer. He was a heavy. He threatened reporters. He threatened even students that he viewed as standing in opposition to President Trump. The prosecutors in the Southern District relayed some of those threats that he made to reveal what they thought was the true character or lack thereof of Michael Cohen.
So then does that extend to the president? I mean, if you say that this was the personality of the person who was representing him and was characterized as his fixer, how much of that then rubs off on the president? Or is it like the president said, this was my lawyer and I was listening to his advice?
No, the president does bear responsibility here. He picked Michael Cohen, and Michael Cohen never had a good legal reputation. He never had a reputation as someone who was a particularly good lawyer. He was a bit of a thug, and the president hired him. And so there's no escaping that. Last year I wrote a column saying that the president needed to sever Michael Cohen as fast as he could before this McDermott and Daniels thing threatened the White House. Instead, the president brought him closer, had a very famous dinner with him at Mar-a-Lago. Those were mistakes.
Jonathan, it's Harris, and I'm actually joined by another legal mind, Tom Dupree, and I want to get the two of you talking because we talked before the show about a prison sentence and signals it sent, and then we heard from our reporters who said, hey, there might be room for renegotiation in a year. Jonathan, what do you think? And again, I'm going to ask Tom to take over.
I do think that there is a real possibility of the prosecutors coming back. Mueller clearly believes that he's not done with Cohen, and there's some lingering questions that some of us have. Mueller suggested that Cohen had been in contact with people in the White House during the period where he lied to Congress. If that's true, and Cohen is saying that his perjury to Congress was known in advance, this can get even more serious for the administration.
And I generally agree with that. I mean, when you look through the sentencing memoranda from the prosecutors, they clearly were sending a very strong signal that they hadn't gotten everything they thought they might be able to get from Michael Cohen. I suspect this is not the last chapter in the Michael Cohen saga. All of that said, it's my view that if Michael Cohen had valuable information that he wanted to turn over to the prosecutors, now is the time for him to have done it. The prosecutors, I think, have been generous in giving him the option to come back.
Too generous? Because, Jonathan, that's what I hear you saying, that maybe there was just too much leeway given here with the sentencing. Do you think it's too generous?
I do. I wrote a column saying this was Michael Cohen's last hustle. I mean, he really has hustled everyone throughout his career. Even after he turned on the president, it came out later that he had basically sold access to companies like AT&T. He then created a site to get donors to give him hundreds of thousands of dollars so that he could testify against the president. He hustles. And I think the judge here was slightly hustled. I think that he put it too low.
I mean, Tom, I would ask you then, that sounds like a terrible witness. I mean, if he's a known hustler and huckster, it's obviously bad for the president because the president hired that person to represent him. But how can you believe anything he says from here on out, whether it's to his benefit or against the president or whatever?
I think Michael Cohen would be an absolutely atrocious witness for the reasons you mentioned. I think that people will doubt his word. He's obviously admitted to lies and that sort of thing. To the extent he has value, I think it's in the form of information that he could turn over. But we will see what happens. I did think he got a good deal today from that judge.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. Jonathan, what do you think about that?
Well, I agree with it. I think that if Michael Cohen was disappointed, he might have been disappointed on the fines. As far as we know, he made as many as $4 million essentially selling access and influence after the election. He also made hundreds of thousands on a GoFundMe site. So that may have bitten a little deeper than he anticipated. But if he was disappointed with 36 months, he's wildly out of sync with reality.
Yeah.
I mean, they initially asked the judge for 0 jail time, which was perfect lunacy.
Yeah. Okay, we are watching the front of the courthouse right now because we are waiting for Michael Cohen to emerge after this sentencing. We're going to bring that to you as soon as it happens. And in the meantime, we're joined on the couch by Katie Pavlich and Marie Harf. And we can see some people coming out right now while we're waiting for people to get over to the mics. Katie, I'll ask you for your reaction.
Michael Cohen's family is walking out in front right now. But Tom, I had a question for you. So now that the Michael Cohen saga is somewhat over with the sentencing, although he's not reporting to federal prison until March, my question is about the implications here for President Trump. Michael Cohen said in court documents to prosecutors that the president, while a candidate, directed him to violate campaign finance laws. What does that mean for the president, and what kind of evidence would Michael Cohen have to show for prosecutors to move forward with that with the commander-in-chief?
Before you answer that, hang on, we just want to let our viewers know that that group that we saw walk out and the camera followed them, that was his daughter and his son and also his wife coming out ahead of him, so we expect him shortly. Go ahead.
Yeah, and Katie, to your question, it's a great question. Look, I mean, there's no way you could spin Michael Cohen's testimony as a victory for president. It's harmful. That said, my guess is that to make a stronger case against the president, they will need something more than the word of Michael Cohen. We've talked about
some
the fact some evidence,
Right.
some smoking gun, an admission from the president, another witness, some email traffic, something along those lines. Because if you're going into a federal court and trying to convict the president of the United States based on the word of Michael Cohen, that's a tough
What
sell
about
to
that
make.
question about indicting a sitting president? There have been questions in the last week leading up to the sentencing about, well, maybe the president won't be indicted while he's in the Oval Office, but they could wait it out and he could face these kinds of charges on the other end as a private citizen.
I think the president is in no danger of indictment during his time in office because the Justice Department is going to respect its guidelines in that respect. Once he leaves office, I do think it's an open question. But I will say this, that probably is going to be at least 2 years away.
Here he comes, and we can see Michael Cohen right now emerging from the courtroom, and it looks like he is going directly to departure. We had thought he might say something, but looking at that camera angle, I'm not sure if he just got in the back of that car. Can you guys tell me?
Mr. Cohen did not talk just now.
Okay, it looks like he's pulling away, and he did not talk to the press. We saw his family come out shortly before that. Marie?
It's so interesting. When you look at the downfall of Michael Cohen, as Brett was talking about a few minutes ago, he said in his remarks today, quote, "Today is the day that I am getting my freedom back. I have been living in a personal and mental incarceration ever since the day that I accepted the offer to work for a real estate mogul whose business acumen I deeply admired." This is Michael Cohen. It feels very emotional. It feels like he's having some sort of moment of, I don't know, clarity, and he wanted to tell the truth, as he says. He wanted to bear it all, turning on his longtime boss. This is like a Shakespearean downfall in some ways, right? And it's just been so interesting watching him and hearing what he said in the courtroom. The other point I would mention is Congress also wants to still talk to him. They may do that before March.
Yeah, and that would be a big one because one of the things that he pled to was lying before Congress.
Absolutely.
All right. So that was Michael Cohen, the president's former attorney who pled guilty today and was sentenced to, among other things, tax evasion, campaign finance violations, and a number of crimes. He was sentenced to 36 months. He's also turning over at least $100,000 in fines. Please stay tuned to Fox News Channel and this Fox station for continuing coverage of this story. I'm Melissa Francis in New York. All right, we're going to bring it back out to the couch now and get a broader reaction. You said, I mean, almost everybody agrees that this seems like a pretty lenient sentence at this point. What does that tell you about the future and what's next?
Well, I guess the first thing I would say is that Michael Cohen, I think, got a break today. I mean, to be sure, his lawyers asked for 0 jail time. Right. That was never in the cards. The fact that, at least as the reporter was saying, that his family didn't audibly gasp when 36 months was spoken, tells me that this was on the lighter end of what they anticipated. As far as where we go from here, I think the first question, of course, is whether Cohen has anything more to give to the prosecutors. That remains an open question. It's possible he'll come back now that he's been sentenced and try to offer up more information in exchange for a lighter sentence, although I don't see that happening in the near future, at least. I think the other question going forward is where we go from here as far as the larger Mueller investigation goes. Today's actions and the sentencing of Michael Cohen closes a chapter. It was a long chapter. It was a sordid chapter, but I think it closes this chapter in large part as to Michael Cohen. I don't know where we are going to go from here as far as Mueller goes, because honestly, Mueller has not shown his cards in terms of what other evidence he has, in terms of what other witnesses he has to talk with, whether he's satisfied with the answers he's already gotten from the president. So I think although we can put a period on this particular part of the Mueller investigation, there's still a lot of stuff to come.
And that period is Michael Cohen, attorney for the president, former fixer for the president, now sentenced to 36 months. We know that that sentence is going to begin in March. We will be back with a lot more on this and the other big stories of the day. Don't go away.
The sentencing at a federal level of the president's former personal attorney, Michael Cohen. That is moments ago when he walked out of the courtroom. We thought he might say something. He didn't. It took like a short 30 seconds to get into that vehicle that was awaiting, and then he and his team left the courthouse pretty quickly here in New York City. So there were some things shouted at him. He didn't say anything going in or out. Bret Baier, chief political anchor and host of Special Report, is back with us now. You know, the constellation around the president years ago, past and recent present, is what's being looked at now. And how much does today tell us about the relationships of the people in the president's inner circle?
Well, I think it tells us that at the beginning he made the wrong choice with Michael Cohen, and clearly this is turning around. Just moments ago, Lanny Davis, Cohen's attorney, released a statement saying he's no longer going to be his attorney. He'll be his communications advisor, adding that at the appropriate time, after Mr. Mueller completes his investigation and issues his final report, I, Lanny Davis, look forward to assisting Michael to state publicly all he knows about Mr. Trump, and that includes any appropriate congressional committee interested in the search for truth and the difference between facts and lies. Mr. Trump's repeated lies cannot contradict stubborn facts. So there's the billboard that Lanny Davis puts out for Democratic-controlled committees to ask Michael Cohen to testify, which I'm sure will happen. And to my earlier point, Harris, I think that this March 6th time may be another bite at the apple for the special counsel to go talk to Cohen again. And just to give one more thing in perspective, there are some very unsavory characters in all of this. Think about it. Michael Avenatti is in the back of that room. Avenatti represented Stormy Daniels, who just had a ruling from a judge saying that she had to pay for Donald Trump's lawyer's fees, $300,000 for a defamation suit that was the judge said not appropriate. Avenatti's got his own problems. Then you have the filing last night from Michael Flynn, also charged with lying to federal investigators. But the FBI deputy director told him to talk to FBI agents without a lawyer, and they didn't give him any warning. And McCabe himself is now being looked at and prosecuted potentially for lying to federal investigators. So there's so many unsavory elements to all of this. Michael Cohen is just one of them.
Yeah, I am due to sit down with the president at the White House about this time tomorrow for Outnumbered Overtime. And with all of this news breaking, Brett, and you laying out what you called unsavory characters, our legal experts this hour have said that Michael Cohen got a break in the sentencing, and I'm wondering how that affects the president, because there's been talk of pardons for people in his circle, so on and so forth. What reporting are you hearing in the Capitol area?
Not that Michael Cohen is in the list of pardons. I think you look at the president's tweets, and that's pretty much kind of evident. Paul Manafort's still on the list. Obviously, the president has said that publicly as a possibility. I think a lot will depend on what goes forward in the next few weeks. It doesn't seem like Robert Mueller is finished. It doesn't seem like they're done. And if they were, I think we would have seen the big shoe drop already.
All right. Brett, always great to have you on the program, especially when we have breaking news. Special report, Pop Your Corn, 6 p.m. Eastern. We know where we will be. Thank you, my friend.
All right, joining us now, we want to bring in Jonathan Turley. He is constitutional law professor at George Washington University, a Fox News contributor. You have told us that you thought that this was a pretty light sentence. Does that tell you something new? Is there something more that he shared that we don't know about? I mean, what does that tell you?
No, I think that the judge followed the lead of Mueller on this and said that he was cooperating and gave him this downward departure towards the 36-month mark. I think that's pretty light considering what this individual has done. Cohen refers to wanting to be the better version of me. We've never really seen that. I'm not too sure what that would look like, but I know what the better version for Mueller would look like. I think that Mueller has already alluded to Cohen acting not alone. He's already said that he was directed in violating federal election law by the president, but he also said that he had communications with people at the White House. This is where Cohen can still be quite damaging. Yeah, he lacks credibility. He's perfectly radioactive, but if he's given names to Mueller of people that he said were aware that he would lie to Congress or create a false narrative, that will metastasize this further. The question is whether the legal team made the mistake of bringing him inside the White House where those types of allegations could compromise existing lawyers within the White House.
Tom, do we know anything about that?
Well, I guess just on the point that Jonathan just made, I guess my sense is that today's sentence really reflects primarily that the federal judge in this case who is issuing the sentence, this is one of the most subjective things that a judge does, is decide the length of time that someone will spend in jail, really gave Bob Mueller's statements a little more weight maybe than he did to the prosecutors in New York. You'll recall that Bob Mueller was emphasizing the extent to which Cohen has cooperated and has been helpful, whereas the prosecutors in New York weren't quite as friendly toward Cohen. And it sounds like the judge, in looking at all these somewhat conflicting reports, gave maybe a little more weight to what Mueller was saying, possibly with an eye toward the information Cohen might provide in the future.
Can I make a comment here about the political implications of this? Michael Cohen now has this legal problem. However, Lanny Davis, let's not forget who he is. He's a Clinton operative who wants revenge for 2016. In his statement, he says, we're going to give Michael Cohen the biggest public platform we can over the next couple of months before he goes into prison to talk about the facts surrounding what Donald Trump wanted him to do during the 2016 election. 2020 is happening now. Democrats want revenge for 2016. Michael Cohen feels slighted by the president after dedicating most of his career to working for him, saying, as Brett pointed out, he would take a bullet for the president. This now is about political power and Democrats bolstering Michael Cohen and using him front and center for a public relations campaign going into 2020 to try and paint the president as someone who has corrupt people around him who they don't want to put back in the White House.
Jonathan, before you go, I'm sorry, we just have to slip in one more with Jonathan. Marie had said earlier that she felt like, that this was a moment when he was coming forward and having, an epiphany that he wanted to be truthful about what has gone on in his life. I would ask you for your reaction.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy the redemptive sinner take. I wouldn't if I was the judge. This is an individual who has a horrendous record and reputation. He ripped off the public and the government for millions. He got companies to give him $4 million, essentially sell access and influence. He has tended to go with whatever person he thought would be better for him. And I think this was his last hustle. And it came up fairly good for him. He will go to jail. But I also think that this is the legal version of scratch a lover, find a foe. He is now all in against the president. And I think that he's going to try to damage him in the months to come. And I think Mueller's going to try to help him do that.
Jonathan, I want what you had for breakfast.
Yeah, that was quite an image. I love that one.
You've got a lot going on.
Stuff. All right, Jonathan Turley, we're going to let you go. Thank you so much. We appreciate your time. And we have a lot more to discuss on this topic after this break. Don't go away. This is Outnumbered, and I'm Melissa Francis. Here today is Harris Faulkner, Town Hall editor and Fox News contributor Katie Pavlich, Fox News analyst and co-host of Benson and Harf on Fox News Radio, Marie Harf. And joining us on the couch today, Tom Dupree, former Deputy Assistant Attorney General under President George W. Bush. And boy, we have a lot of legal issues to get to today. We need your expert opinion and your smile and laugh.
Absolutely. I'm ready to get to
it. Michael Cohen, to learn his fate today, reports from inside the courtroom are that Cohen says he takes, quote, full responsibility for crimes, including campaign finance violations and lying to Congress. Federal prosecutors reportedly claim that the president directed Cohen to pay off two women who alleged that they had affairs with the president. Earlier, President Trump distancing himself from any alleged involvement in the campaign finance violations, telling Reuters, quote, Michael Cohen is a lawyer. I assume he would know what he's doing. Number one, it wasn't a campaign contribution. If it were, it's only civil. And even if it's only civil, there was no violation based on what we did. But Democrats like Congressman Eric Swalwell blasting the president's defense.
Let's go back to April 5 when the president was aboard Air Force One and said he had no knowledge of any of these payments. And so now here we are, he's acknowledging the payments. Look, he is a lying president, and a lying president is a weak president. And I don't think we should hang our hats on these payoffs to Stormy Daniels and others. But I think they show that he is a shadowy operator, and it's probably more important to look at how he has conducted himself as it relates to Russia.
Laura Ingalls live at the U.S. District Court in New York City with more. Laura.
Well, good afternoon. It has certainly been a very busy morning, and a lot of people have spoken in front of the judge. We understand that the sentencing is happening in just mere moments. Both defense attorneys, prosecutors, and now Michael Cohen have all spoken in front of Judge William Pauley III to express their view of who Michael Cohen really is. Michael Cohen's kind of the lead right here because he just got up and was able to speak directly, and this is really the most that we have heard from him in regard regards to all of the charges against him. He started by addressing the court saying that today is the day I am getting my freedom back. I have been living in a personal and mental incarceration ever since the day I accepted the offer to work for a real estate mogul whose business is that I deeply admired. He said he stands before your honor humbly and painfully aware that we're here for one reason. He said he takes full responsibility for each act that he pleaded guilty to, including those implicating the president of the United States. There was one moment, our producers tell us, that he did tear up in court, apologizing to the public, saying you deserve to know the truth and lying to you was unjust. He said he had a blind loyalty to the president. He mentioned the president's tweet on calling him weak. Cohen agreed with the president and added that his weakness was a blind loyalty to Donald Trump, saying he felt it was his duty to cover up his dirty deeds. Now, as we heard from the others who spoke in front of the judge, and remember, everybody is trying to get in front of the judge to give them their side. The prosecutors, of course, with the Southern District of New York want a harsh sentence for Michael Cohen. Robert Mueller's team, a prosecutor, was here today who talked to the judge about the cooperation that Michael Cohen has given their office in terms of the Russia probe. No cameras or cell phones allowed, so we're waiting literally for somebody to come running out to tell us what the sentence will be. We understand that it's, there is the federal sentencing guidelines that could go between 42 and 63 months. We hear it might be somewhere in between, but really nobody knows until the moment the judge gives his sentence, which we are expecting any moment. Melissa?
Laura Ingle, thank you so much for that. Tom, I'll bring it out to the couch to start. I think everybody who's watching this is wondering, what is the significance of what happens today for the president?
Right. Well, the first question, of course, is the significance as far as Michael Cohen goes. And we've all been speculating on where the sentence is going to come down in a range. My prediction is that the judge is probably going to go